Williams has finally lost patience and pulled the trigger on changing its F1 driver lineup mid-season, but Logan Sargeant's replacement is a real surprise. Sargeant's F1 career is over after 36 Grand Prix starts, having failed to even make it to the end of his second season. In his place comes Franco Colapinto, Williams' junior driver who is only in his first year of Formula 2, in which he's 6th in the standings. That campaign's heading out the window now thanks to this unexpected but huge opportunity. It's always harsh when a driver gets dropped mid-season, regardless of the circumstances. But Sargeant's exit has been coming for a long time, and judged purely from a sporting perspective, it is perfectly justified. Some were even surprised that he lasted this long. Replacing him has been hinted at for several months, as Sargeant has generally under-delivered in F1. He is far from a hopeless driver, and some circumstances really were against him, like how uncompetitive Williams was for months with a massively overweight car, the spare chassis crisis that forced Sargeant to be parked mid-weekend in Australia even though it was Alex Albon who had crashed heavily, and an ensuing disparity in car upgrades that meant Sargeant had to wait until deep into the season to get onto the same specification. This was far from ideal and not Sargeant's fault at all, but what was in his control was how he performed in that situation, and he rarely, if ever, pieced together a complete weekend. There were flashes of promise, but he hasn't been quick enough and he's crashed too much. That is an unsustainable combination for an F1 driver. Sargeant's had spins or crashes or clashes in more than a dozen of his F1 weekends, giving him an incident rate of more than 1 in 3, and what happened in Zandvoort was the final straw. Williams boss James Vowles was clearly appalled by the size of Sargeant's practice crash, how careless it was to drift onto the grass like that in wet conditions, and the consequences in terms of a 7-figure repair bill and a huge rebuild job in weekend and production of new parts at the factory. Vowles has acted very quickly, given Sargeant's exit was confirmed barely 48 hours after the race finished, but clearly it wasn't the plan to do this now. Why change a driver one race after the summer break and between back-to-back Grand Prix? It makes absolutely no sense to let Sargeant continue for just one weekend after the break and compromise Colapinto's preparations this way. No serious team or team boss would choose to bung in a rookie driver at about 2 days' notice when they could have had all of August to prepare mentally, to get in the factory either side of the shutdown for simulator work and briefings, and to have an extra weekend in the car. And whatever you may think of Williams and Vowles, they are very serious about how they do things. If they were dead keen to get rid of Sargeant, they'd have done it in the massively more convenient gap in the calendar that F1 just had. It indicates that things were changed drastically by what happened at Zandvoort, and it's gone beyond simply Sargeant had a crash. He's had another crash which cost performance, time, opportunity and money. It also hurts team morale. Rebuilding cars trackside and pumping out parts at base are an occupational hazard in F1, but Sargeant's given Williams more work than most drivers, and the immediate destruction of a major upgrade package at Zandvoort was particularly galling. Clearly, Williams' faith and patience fell to absolute zero for it to feel that parachuting in an underprepared F2 rookie had a better chance of yielding points and being better for the team. The timing and the identity of his successor are more damning for Sargeant than simply being dropped. There were multiple potential candidates to replace Sargeant. Liam Lawson was the preferred choice, but Red Bull wouldn't release him on a no-strings-attached basis for the rest of 2024 because it might need him in one of its own teams before the end of the year. Williams couldn't take a driver it might lose again in a few races' time. Kimi Antonelli was another option. He is even less experienced than Colapinto, but is preparing to race for the Mercedes Works team in F1 in 2025. A short-term loan therefore could have appealed, but Mercedes wants him to see out his F2 season and his F1 program, which includes an FP1 debut at Monza this weekend, as it was felt that being dropped in somewhere else for just 9 races would disrupt his preparation more than it would help him. The driver who will be most disappointed to miss out will be Mick Schumacher, who has been passed over by yet another F1 team. Even the backing of Mercedes boss Toto Wolff and Sebastian Vettel couldn't overcome the doubts from a 2-year stint in F1 that was definitely better than Sargeant's, but still fell into the category of being unconvincing and had a few too many crashes. So Williams opted for Colapinto, with the appeal rumoured to be boosted by Argentine backers who threw in a few $1 million to get one of their own back on the grid for the first time in more than 20 years. That's not essential since Dorilton bought the team a few years ago and has invested heavily in it, but might either help cover the losses incurred by Sargeant's many crashes or act as insurance if Colapinto has his own accidents while learning on the job. It's an interesting choice on merit though, not just one decided by money. Colapinto joined the Williams Driver Academy during Vowles' first year in charge of the team in 2023. It's good that a team has backed its own junior again rather than gone elsewhere. It's a fun pick, as wildcard choices often are. Colapinto's having a good rookie F2 season, if not stunningly great. He's won a sprint race, is 6th in the standings, and is beating his much more experienced teammate, F3 champion Dennis Hauger. It's really hard to judge a driver solely on F2 this year, because even by that championship standards, it's a bit of a crapshoot. Mercedes-bound Antonelli is only 7th in the standings, and 2025 Haas F1 driver Ollie Behrman is a woeful 15th. F1 teams clearly aren't relying solely on F2 results to judge driver ability levels, so neither should we. Colapinto's Silverstone F1 FP1 outing has probably made a big difference here. We liked what we saw following his session very closely, and more importantly, so did Williams. His pace was good for such inexperience, he leant on the car confidently without taking it too far or doing anything silly, his feedback and his feeling was impressive, and just generally how he handled the whole thing was very mature. It clearly left a mark on Williams, which wouldn't be putting him anywhere near a race seat, no matter how desperate it might be to get rid of Sargeant, if it felt Colapinto didn't have the potential to make the most of it. Williams has made it clear this change has been made in the pursuit of scoring more points. The team is only 9th in the championship and vulnerable to finishing last if Sauber, the soon-to-be Audi Works team, stops being relentlessly terrible. But if Williams can start stringing some points finishes together, beating Alpine to 8th is possible. And on the evidence of Albon's speed at Zandvoort in the upgraded car before he was disqualified from qualifying for a non-performance enhancing issue with the new floor, there will be chances to fight for top 10s over the rest of 2024. Getting both cars in the points will help Williams massively. Colapinto's far from a guarantee of that, but Williams doesn't have a lot to lose, so it's chasing the upside with a driver who might have more of a spark than the other available choices. Lawson proved last year that a good but not stunningly great young driver can perform perfectly well in F1 if they have the right attitude and opportunity. So best case scenario, Colapinto adjusts well, is quick and dependable, and scores a few points, which is better than what Sargeant offered. Worst case scenario, he crashes too much and is slow when he doesn't, which isn't much different to what Sargeant offered. There's no 2025 Williams seat on the table, given the team has already signed Carlos Sainz, and some have used this to question the logic behind choosing Colapinto, as if he does do really well, there won't be anywhere for him to go. But if that happens, then it's helped Williams in the short term, which is its immediate priority, and not auditioning for a 2025 seat could be very beneficial in achieving that, as it reduces the pressure a little. Plus, neither Williams nor Colapinto expected this. It's just a huge bonus opportunity for him, so if it goes super well and he doesn't have a Williams seat to step into in 2025, that's a great problem to be facing. In that scenario, he might have put himself in the shop window for a loan move elsewhere, considering there is currently at least a Sauber seat still available. Or he could guarantee himself a Williams reserve role with expanded F1 opportunities and cement his place as next in the queue should either of the Albon or Sainz seats open up short or medium term. Colapinto might go back to F2 for a second season regardless of how this F1 stint goes. Either way, he gets a crack at F1 and Williams can evaluate how good its protege really is. The upside for both driver and team is high, but so are expectations. Williams won't be asking him to put the car in Q3 at the first attempt and finish in the top 6, but it will expect a steep trajectory of improvement in response to a steep learning curve. Getting out of Q1 a few times would be a nice starting point. If he can do that and drive sensibly, there will be opportunities between now and the end of the season to score points in that car. That is what Williams needs from its second driver. Despite being given a lot of time and chances, Sargeant never looked like getting to that level. Colapinto just might.